Hello, everyone, and welcome to the brand new Good Things Are Brewing podcast, which I am so excited about. This is episode 1, which is Launch a Podcast with Cory Harrison, which I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes and what it means and how it all works. So I have a special guest here with me today. This is Cory Harrison, and I will let him introduce himself very briefly.
Well, I am Cory Harrison, and I'm excited to be the first guest on the Good Things Are Brewing podcast. I also happen to be the spouse of your host, Miss Stacie Simpson. So there is that. I currently serve as the executive director of YMCA Camp Greenville. So I spend a lot of my time living and working at a summer camp. And so that's a little bit about me.
Yay, thank you. And many of our listeners and viewers will know me already, but just in case, I am the host of the podcast. My name is Stacie Simpson, and I manage an online community called Good Things Are Brewing, and we spend a lot of time drinking coffee and tea and cocoa and other delicious things. So cheers to you, Cory, for being here as my guest. We're sipping out of our Good Things Are Brewing mugs today, and we are drinking Java Momma's Victorian caramel coffee today. So Cory and I are each having a little bit of Victorian caramel. So I'll be curious, Cory, at some point for you to tell me what you think of it. But for now, tell me, how did you prepare your
sounds
coffee?
Very Bridgerton of us.
Very Bridgerton. Oh yeah. If I could speak in a British accent.
Because it's called Victorian, you know. I did not prepare my coffee because I am very simple when it comes to coffee right now. I drink it black as it comes out of the coffee pot. Now, that's not always been the case. I used to drink lots of cream and lots of sugar in my coffee up until, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something, Stacie. If I went to your traditional coffee place, like let's say like a Dunkin' Donuts or something, I would have ordered regular cream, which is 3 pumps of cream and 5 sugars. But I cut all of that sugar out of my diet in hopes of living longer and being healthier. And so I recently tried to add sugar and cream back into my coffee, like just maybe a little bit, and I couldn't even drink it. I dumped it out. And so
it's amazing how your taste buds,
Victorian caramel flavor.
Yeah, it's amazing how your taste buds change when you start kind of a new routine like that. Yeah,
for sure.
So I'm drinking my Victorian caramel with just a splash of Chobani coffee creamer. They are not a sponsor of this podcast. I wish they were, but this is my favorite creamer right now.
They could be. Chobani, reach out to us at Stacie Simpson at javamomma.com.
Nope, that is not a correct contact information for me. It would be goodthingsarebrewing.com is the website. You can find me there, goodthingsarebrewing.com.
Perfect.
So this is the sweet cream. I also have some of the pumpkin spice flavored one in the refrigerator. So yummy, so good. So I just poured a little bit in, mostly to be able to tell them 2 different serving methods, because I made your coffee for you today because we live together. In most cases, the guest on the podcast does not live with me, and they will be preparing their own coffee before the episode, and we'll share exactly how they did that. But we used Java Momma sample size Victorian caramel in our auto drip pot, and it's delicious. You looked like you were going to say something.
People love that pumpkin spice around this time of year, don't they?
Oh yeah,
I see it everywhere.
It's
I don't want anything pumpkin.
Well, it's not necessarily pumpkin-y. It's more about the spice part. Like, think about the spices that go in a pumpkin pie. That's the jam. That's what it's all about, in my opinion. I mean, there is some pumpkin aspect to it probably in the recipe, but I think it's more about the spices. Yeah.
In the fall, I'm more of an apple spice kind of guy.
Oh,
that's what you know about me.
I wish we would have had that conversation before I made you pick a coffee flavor, because I also have Dutch apple strudel option. So that'll be for another time.
I'm happy with this. It's delicious.
Yay, fantastic. Okay, so Here's the situation, my friends, for our new Good Things Are Brewing podcast. I absolutely love to enjoy my cup of coffee early in the morning when I first get up, before the day has started, by myself, alone, in a room, in the quiet, without my dear family, who I love very much. I love you, babe. But I like to drink my coffee in solitude. I'm an introvert in that way. But there is a second favorite way that I like to enjoy my coffee, and that is with a friend. And I think that many of you can probably identify with that. Going to a coffee shop, meeting up at a friend's house, sitting out on the porch like Cory is doing right now so that we don't get echo in our Zooms. But having coffee with a friend is just such a special experience. It's a great way to connect, to chat, to slow down the rest of the world and just kind of catch up, and to create those experiences and memories together. So some of my favorite times with my friends are when I'm coming through their city and we meet up for coffee. So that is really what I want to create with the podcast. I'm going to have coffee with a friend, and then you all are going to get to learn about or explore something that is a connection point between me and my friend, and kind of what they're into, what their area of expertise is, what their passion is, what where their joy comes from, what they're doing right now in life, what their latest adventure is, things like that. So there are probably 18,000 things that I could chat with Cory Harrison about, because that's what we do. We drink coffee and talk about things. That's basically the basis of our entire marriage, is it not?
Foundation.
That's right. So for episode 1, though, I wanted to talk about kind of the plan for the podcast, how it's all set up, how it's going to work. And so I'm going to chat with Cory Harrison about starting a podcast, because I have started one podcast before of my own, which kind of transitioned into a second one. Cory and I started a podcast together, sort of. I'm starting this one now, and I think he's about to start or expand the one he already has, right?
I think the one that we had, which we did on a different platform, was about coffee too. I think it was like called Coffee Talk with Cory and Stacie.
Yes, we did one time create a podcast called Coffee Chat with Cory and Stacie, but that never actually started. We never recorded. We had a logo and a title, but we never recorded an episode. I was referencing Hey Camp Greenville, because we started Hey Camp Greenville together.
Yes.
Right. So tell me a little bit about our last podcast creating excursions of starting Hey Camp Greenville, and what that's all about, and what the purpose of it was, and now how you're kind of thinking about adapting that going forward.
Yeah. So Camp Greenville is the camp where we live and where I work. And the idea was when parents drop their campers off for summer camp on Sunday afternoon, the line is just so long to get in, and there's just a lot of waiting if you're the first person in line. And so we thought, what's a way that we could entertain our families, but also communicate a lot of different things during that time, including different songs or, funny things that happen at camp, or rules and things like that for the drop off. And so that's what we did. Hey Camp Greenville is a phrase that we use at camp. Anybody on our staff will just shout the words Hey Camp Greenville, and our campers yell a phrase back and then immediately go silent. So it's kind of based off of that phrase that we use at camp, but it was just to communicate, and we continued it on for a couple of summers. Now we're getting to a point where I'm realizing that communicating through video is incredibly important, so that people can see and feel the emotion that you have when you're talking, versus it being kind of edited together just in audio, or doing an email or a website or something like that. So my coworker, our director of camping, Jenna Johnson, and I have a lot of things that we want to say about camp that sometimes don't come across as well as they could in writing. For instance, camp is a really unique diversity and inclusion statement. But just to write it down doesn't communicate our passion for making sure that every kid gets to experience camp as they should. And so we can talk through that and help parents feel comfortable with those statements the more we do it on video. So our goal is really to take Camp Greenville more into something like this, or onto YouTube and into a video format. So that's kind of why we're moving that direction with Hey Camp Greenville.
Yeah, I think you and I are definitely in alignment with that importance of video and how much more you can communicate when you put the audio and the visual together. So that's why we're starting this podcast. I wanted to have the video component where we're really sitting together, really sipping our coffee, having a chat, and people can see that. And then also have the audio version available, because so many people also like to multitask. So like you're saying, potentially your families are in the car. And so in that case, we don't want the driver to be watching a video. We want them to just be listening in. And like, I was just outside doing some lawn work and I was listening to a podcast, in my headphones at the same time. So having that flexibility and those options, I think it's really cool. And that's why I decided to do that with this one. Talking about kind of the content piece, when I started my first podcast, which was the Silver and Gold podcast for Girl Scout troop leaders, and then that morphed into the All Things Girl Scouts podcast, which had the same audience, but a little bit broader reach because I partnered with a Girl Scout council on that. That was very content focused. We wanted people to learn tips and tricks, get resources. I think what I'm excited about in this new format of Good Things Are Brewing, not only reaching a wider audience, but kind of mixing together, I think that content and learning something new thing is really, really important, because I want it to be useful time for people, but to have it be enjoyable and entertaining too. So to like have a little more fun, that's an aspect that I want to pull into it. So as you're thinking about shifting your podcast into the next phase of it, what are the intentional shifts that you want to make from the previous version to kind of the new version of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think besides just the video aspect of it, which I think is a dynamic shift, because right now everything for us really isn't even done through podcasts. It's just done through website communication. Some of the intentional shifts that we want to make is one, emotional connection. We believe that the business that I'm in of youth development, that it is incredibly emotional to drop your child off at camp, to drop your child off at school. For some people, these are very spiritual acts even. And so we do not want to undervalue that. So on a high level, we want to make this emotional connection with our parents so that you can see when we say, this is our policy, or this is why we do what we do, or this is a song we sing, you hear the emotional aspect of it and the heart of that. So one, I think that is really fundamental for us. Two, making sure that we're making ourselves approachable. You are not just dropping your kid off for 7 days at a place where you have not seen the face of the people running that camp. Yeah. You've not heard their voice or only. We want our parents to understand that it is a great responsibility that we take, that you are giving your kids to us, that you're allowing us to develop grit and character and core values and all of the things that camp develops, along with fun, magic, and experiences, educational experiences that they have, that we honor that, and it means a lot to us. And so we do not want to just be a blank face or cartoon character or a picture on a website or just a voice on a podcast. We want to be much more than that. We want you to put face and voice and inflection and all of those things into that communication experience. So for us, it's really I hate to boil it down to this, but it is a bit of a marketing strategy for us in the sense of communication, or communication strategy more than marketing.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because it kind of circles back to what I want to do with this podcast too, of the idea of making those connections, the people connections, and putting faces with things. In so far, my community has been based in a Facebook group. We have about 150 members in the Good Things Are Brewing virtual cafe Facebook group, and it's super fun. And we talk a lot about coffee and tea, and we share pictures of our mugs, and we do fun giveaways, and we post funny coffee memes, and like we have a good time in there. But I feel like I've really gotten to know the different members in that group, but there's a missing link because they don't get to know each other on a deeper level other than what kind of coffee they're drinking today, right? So you said you have a responsibility to make this connection and help people feel comfortable and help parents connect with camp. I think I'm feeling a sense of responsibility that I know all of the amazing humans that are in this community with me, this Good Things Are Brewing community, and they have so much passion and knowledge and joy to share with the world. And so it seems like such a missing piece that they don't all know each other. And that's what I want to create here, is an opportunity for people to share their stories and make those connections. So when I start thinking about, our upcoming episode, now I haven't invited any of these people to be guests yet, but hopefully Cory will share with them that it was a fun experience. But I think about all the people in the Good Things Are Brewing community, and I hope they won't mind me sharing this, but I think about, we could learn about starting a photography business with Kristen. We could learn about living off the grid with Bernadette. We could learn about tackling anxiety with a couple of the ladies that I talk with about that often. We could talk about running marathons and doing triathlons with Cheryl. We can talk about pursuing a graduate degree with Shannon. There's all kinds of amazing things that are happening with the people that are part of this community. And I really feel that pull to help connect everyone with each other and share those stories out. So I'm really excited to be able to do that through this format.
I love that's the direction you're going. It has me thinking even about the Hey Camp Greenville podcast and video, and the idea that is not an element of what we were thinking. It was really just based around two people, my director of camping and myself, just kind of dialoguing and sharing and passing out information. But there could be real elements to say, let's meet the community of Camp Greenville and what it represents. I just think back to last Sunday, we had a recent Camp Greenville alumni win an Emmy Award. We have Camp Greenville alumni and former campers who have startups in Silicon Valley and are modeling in New York, and all these different things that are happening. Well, video and chats like this to help the community get to know each other is an element I did not think of for the Hey Camp Greenville podcast.
Yeah. And it may or may not fit your, what your goals are and what you're going for. It all sounds good, but at some point you have to, when you're creating a podcast, you really have to hone in on what is the purpose and then what's the format that supports that purpose and make those hard decisions. So I think we're probably getting close to the end of our time here. I think I'm curious if anyone who's listening or watching has ever thought about starting a podcast before or has started their own. So please reach out to us and let us know. You can comment on any of the social media spaces or visit us at goodthingsArebrewing.com in the podcast section and let us know there. I guess, Cory, would you have any words of encouragement for anyone who is interested in starting a podcast or advice or podcasts that you love to listen to that you would recommend, or any kind of fun tidbits to kind of close out with?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of information out there on different styles of podcasts and way that you can do them. And we all know from the podcasts we listen to, they're all very unique. And in different. And so my word of advice is the reason that we have, or my thoughts is the reason that we have not moved into the video podcast system yet for Camp Greenville and the Hey Camp Greenville is because we're still wanting to make sure we do it right. And I think with anything, we want to convey quality, and you want to convey that you've done your research and that you're doing it well, because it speaks well for whatever your brand is, whether you're representing a company, yourself, your own business, you want to represent that well. So I think that's incredibly important. Like things like you wouldn't want your dog walking around in the background of your video podcast. That would be unprofessional
Totally
of somebody. Future guest right here to the podcast.
Yeah, I could interview him. He would talk probably. But you know what? Part of what I love about our Good Things Are Brewing community is that it is real life. I would say the majority of people who connect in our community are women, are moms, are working moms, or wearing a lot of hats. And so there's a lot of life that happens in the background while we're doing all the other things. And sometimes our coffee is what helps us get through, each day. So having the dog walking around in the background, I think is totally comfortable for this group.
And then to answer your second question, like podcasts I'm listening to, I listen to what's called the D23 Podcast. So this is the official podcast for Disney. So 23 is based off 1923 when Disney was founded. And so
I think maybe
on a future episode.
I was going to say, we'll probably have you back for another episode to talk about your Disney obsession. Am I allowed to call it that?
Sure. Yeah. So the D23 podcast is something that I listen to.
I listen to Kid News with our 14-year-old almost every day, which is a news podcast for kids. And so that's also a great way to get your news if you want kind of a light version. I recommend it for all adults as well. And then I love listening to a podcast called Focus on This, which is put out by, why can't I say his name right now? The Full Focus Planner guy. What's his name?
Michael Hyatt.
Yeah, Michael Hyatt. So his company, Michael Hyatt Company, the podcast is not hosted by him. It's hosted by some other folks who are hilarious. They make me laugh, but it's a personal productivity and business productivity focused podcast. So it's kind of that mix that I was talking about earlier of like content and useful information, but is entertaining and makes me laugh at the same time. That's called Focus on This, and it comes out every Monday. And they say it's the most productive podcast on the internet. That's what they say every time. And then they're always like, Happy Monday. And I love it because I also love Mondays. And so excellent. Well, thank you so much, Cory, for joining us for episode number 1 of the Good Things Are Brewing podcast. And I can't wait to continue on and see what's in store for episode 2. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited. When this thing blows up and goes viral, I'll be able to say I was the first guest on the Good Things Are Brewing podcast.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Sounds like a plan. Let's do it. All right. Cheers.
Bye.